Hello, this is Andrea from OurDayDream. Today I have a special guest. His name is Jack Coleman. He is the creator of Quantum Coils and also has a coaching program, Quantum Coaching. So without further ado, here is Jack Coleman.
Hey, hey.
There you are.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Oh, yeah.
So, my first question for you is, yep, I'm gonna get right at it.
Yeah, let's do it.
A lot of people have never heard of quantum.
Quantum in general?
Yeah, so you have quantum coaching, quantum coils. You were working on a book too, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have three particular things that I'm focused on, and one of them is a book / theory. And that I've been writing since 2012. And I've written it like a few different times because, just keep adding things. But yeah, so I do what I would call quantum coaching. I also make quantum coils, which are personal resonance devices. And so, yeah, I mean, quantum's like a buzzword. And of course, it's floating around. It's an emerging science that basically was birthed maybe around 150 years ago to about 100 years ago. And so I believe that the quantum is actually the threshold into the next dimension up. So it seems like, yeah, it seems like physics is now moving into this realm that the quantum, that quantum physics is exploring, and it's explaining a lot of our mystical, the mystical side of life, the spiritual side of life. So a lot of the things that happen in this spiritual sense seem to really be explained through a sense of quantum physics, even though we call it physics. And then we use different languaging, like we use different terms and everything in both science and spirituality. They all are pretty much doing the same thing, And so I just started seeing these parallels between them, and so of course that's why I like the word quantum. It's not just because I think something's far out. I mean, I feel like some people use the word quantum just because it's like it's really different and it's really deep. And and so I think that's true. The quantum does get, deep in that sense. But it's really, for me, it's the characteristics of the quantum realm that I like to apply in my mentoring. So a lot of the concepts that I try to bring in mentoring came out of trying to understand quantum physics and metaphysics in general, and then also mixing that with spirituality. And I'm like, wow, they're pretty much the same thing, in my opinion. So then I started using a very simple process in order to reverse engineer these states of mind, to make them relatable in my everyday living. These really far out philosophies that we get in biblical texts or scriptures or principles or teachings, any sort of religious text. All religions, in my opinion, have something really awesome to say at some point.
And they all have a lot in common too that a lot of people try to avoid, is understanding that, even astrology is spoken about in the Bible. So it's like all these different spiritual understandings are all found in the Bible, which are all found in other religions. You know what I mean? So it all seems to be floating to the same place.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that place is something that doesn't have words. I feel like it's nearly impossible to quantify. And I feel like it's a state of mind, let's say. And not to get like too far out into into like that, and like what's the meaning of God and religion in the world and for humans, and versus, you know, the whole galaxy, let's say, or the multiverse, or, you know, whatever, however far you want to go with it. Like, what's the meaning of all that? Like, how would that be possible? But I feel like all religions are generally wanting peace. You know, they
Yeah.
generally want to exercise love,
Mhm.
and the one thing that seems like it's really hard for them all to do is that, you know. And
Yeah.
so it's like, so I started then really seeing the concept of the mind or human consciousness, because I'm like, well, if they're all talking about love, why is it so hard to achieve that? And I don't think it's because they, you know, God invented an evil villain to, you know, convince people to get on his side and not the evil villain side, and, you know, like a test in a way.
Yeah.
um and so that's where it gets into a little bit more of a philosophical conversation in terms, but I like to apply physics and all of that. Like, my understanding of religion and what that means to me comes out of physics. And so I like whatever it is in the universe, I have to be able to describe it in terms of physics, otherwise I won't jump on it. You know, astrology, I didn't actually appreciate until I knew the physics of astrology. And I know they probably wouldn't say there's a book out there, but that's where I wanted to uncover all of these things. So, you know, if God made heaven and hell, I want to know the physics of how that would work.
Right.
You know, I want to know how God is shaped in a human form, you know,
Yeah.
that looks like a human, is in a space in the universe and not in another space, you know, can make something of the universe, but not of him, is a man in particular, not a woman. Um,
Yeah.
and how,
See, my son likes to he likes to see God as a man. He's 9 years old, and so I kind of like to explain to him that God is just in everything. It's in
that's
everything. So
beautiful. Yeah.
it's a spirit. It's like life, you know what I mean? And it's death, and it's just in every single thing. So I think that's why a lot of people, you know, end up running away from the understanding, because that makes absolutely no sense. And actually, that's why I became an atheist,
Mm.
because somebody had said to me, that, you know, if God created everything, well, then who created God? And I'm like, that's true. How did man just all of a sudden come to be, and then there was nothing? And then I realized then, you know, that God was a spirit. And I see the Bible more so as like philosophy, you know what I mean? And so you have all these philosophy texts that you can learn like everything from. And, you know, philosophy is not always point blank, but sometimes it's like looking at things in a way that, you know, some people might understand and other people won't. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
think that, I mean, I love philosophy because it is a lot of, you know, it's just, I don't want to say we're just thinking about what ifs, but that's the one of the main principles in philosophy is duality. You know, can it be this or can it be that, you know?
yeah,
And that to me is all life. I mean,
yeah,
if God can be a man, then it can also be a woman, because we know that both are a thing in the world. You know, if God can be love, it can also be evil, because we know both things are in the world. You know, there, if God can be positive, God can be negative, because we know that is fundamental in energy. Energy can't fluctuate without having a peak and a trough, you know, a high and a low, a positive and a negative. And we just see that all over the place in society. We just call these dualities something, you know, more specific, and we don't necessarily sum them all up as dualities and then
yeah,
call that energy. We would say man and woman, masculine, feminine, love, hate,
yeah,
light, dark, up and down, in and out.
yeah,
And
good and bad.
yeah, good and bad, hard and soft, you know, light and heavy, and
Yeah,
rough and smooth. And so we have all of these different dynamics, and there are always these gradients in between. There's always a special balance point between what we think is any of these dualities. and it's different for everyone. You know, if it's 62 degrees outside, someone might say, wow, it's such a warm day, and then someone else could say it's so freaking cold.
Yeah, that would be
and
me.
and so it's all relative, even though it's the one
Yeah.
absolute truth of that's what the temperature is in terms of physicality, and then the perception of it is different. And that's why everyone's having like a different definition of God and what that is. And you know, if you
Yeah.
say it's all things, people might have a real hard time with that, because they're like, well, then that means that I should worship everything, and that's really hard for me to do. I don't know
Yeah.
how to worship everything all at
Yeah.
once. So I needed to be in a space at a time, and that space would be church on a Sunday morning, you know,
Yeah.
and saying these specific things and
Yeah.
not those other things from
Or
those
it's
other religions.
or it's like I'll love everybody in the congregation, but I won't love the murderer sitting in prison. So,
Exactly.
and it's the labeling of the good and the bad, and that's what confuses everybody, is that they're looking at things as good and bad instead of, we all experience things along the way that made who we are. And just as Paul said in the Bible, I have this war in my mind fighting against my members. So it's like we all want good, we all want to love, but it's not always that easy. We're going to fall short. We're going to lose our temper. Like, these things are just going to happen. And if we're labeling things as good or bad, it's like that murderer in prison needs somebody to give them love. And that was the whole foundation of it. But, the sad fact is that, people focus so much on labeling and putting people in a box, you know what I mean? And organizing things in their mind as this is good and this is bad and this is right and this is wrong, rather than seeing like you're performing things that are wrong every day.
Yeah, and I mean, that to me that's like original sin, and I believe in that, but I believe it's like one half of it. You know, if we just leave it at we're always screwing it up, then it gets really hard to say
Yeah,
that there is a better, and then
yeah,
we lose motivation in that. Kind of like feeling
I like that.
kind of like feeling how small and insignificant a human is compared to the cosmos, because that's what happens when someone thinks that humans are everything. You know, like their mind is so encapsulated and kind of imprisoned in I live in the United States and I work at this job, and I do these things, and you know, I have this family, and so those are the things that they're aware of. And then what do you know, they watch a YouTube video showing the size of the universe, like scaling it out in real time, and then they go, wow, that's how small I am compared to everything. So then they feel so insignificant, and then it gets really
Yeah,
hard to say anything matters, because they're like, it just blew my mind how large everything is, how
yeah,
small I am compared to it. Why would I be the center of this kind of attention? And so their ego, that kind of ego, is shot. And so then there would be a lack of motivation to show up and do anything significant, because we feel so insignificant. So I think
and I think that's what's great about you, is you stick with like neutrality and stay in like the neutral way, and then that kind of shows people like it's not so much about this, it's not so much about that, but it's about this.
it's about the middle point. And there's one analogy I absolutely love, and it's light and dark. And you know, the one thing sitting between the two is you. You know,
Yeah, I
you're the
like that.
one. You know, light is being light is shining on you, and then you see the shadow. But we're all looking at the light source and then the shadow, and then the light source and the light shadow,
I
and it's
love
like, well,
it.
what's right in the middle? You
That's
know, and
awesome.
that's us. And so, you know, we could say that that's what all dualities are. It's just finding some sort of middle ground, which is you know, we could say that energy is an oscillation, and that waveform is a frequency, and so that frequency is energy, and there are harmonics of that. And so now the priority is alignment, because there are some people doing some really shady things in the world, And
Yeah.
it's fine for that reality that is working based on that balance point between good and evil. So that's
Right.
why people think that some things are really healthy, but really all I see is that they're just they're in sync, or they're balanced with each other. And some people need a really high high and really low lows, which is why we have trillionaires not giving their money away, and we have homeless people, can barely even open their jaw to eat. They're so tired. So those are really extreme polarities, and there's a certain balance point that seems to work, because if the rich people gave up their money, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. If the poor people got enough money, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. So there's a learning lesson in it, and so I feel like it's justified, but it's justified within that reality that they want to live in. Because
Yeah.
there are other people that are like, yeah, I have the ability to make $1 billion, but I don't know what I would do with it, and I would feel bad about that, and not having enough money. We'd say, I don't want this, I don't want less than this amount, because I want to do things and I know it requires some money. So
Yeah.
then we find a balance point. We say that's genuinely what my balance point would be. And then we're in harmony, and then we connect with other people that value that. They're like, yeah, I appreciate that you don't just screw over family and friends and whoever else, business partners, so you can make $1 billion for yourself.
Yeah.
So then they're like, I like that you're showing up in this way, and you had this particular balance point. So that balance point is a unique signature that every single person has with every single duality. I know that gets really, it can get like really messy trying to picture that, trying to
Yeah.
envision that. But that's
Yeah.
really what I see in people. Is I see, some people like things, whatever the subject is, we take this subject and then we say, how hard do they like it? How soft do they like it? And then there's always this point where we go, oh, I think I get a feel for that person in terms of what's too much and what's too little for that subject. And then you take another subject within life, because we just talked about money. We didn't even talk about where the money came from or how they
Yeah.
make the money. We can do that with love. We can do that with health. We can do that with nutrition. We can do that with exercise, living situations, like where we live. Is it too warm, too hot? Is it too up in the mountains or too close to the water? And so we all have this balance point, and we all find ourselves in this situation that we would just generally call a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so mixing all of those things together, they're all connected and set on a balance point between a duality. And
What
and
what
so
what do you think is what do you think that should be the main objective in living in peace? Like, what do you think that a human's main objective should be walking?
while living in peace, or to achieve more peace?
To achieve more peace, or just, to live a more fruitful life? What do you think should be the main objective towards their perception?
I would say it's just a balance point. As much as I want to say like there's a right way, means like letting go of money, that can actually make people really sad. And I don't fully recommend it. I recommend this tapping into what feels right. It doesn't have to be what feels always pleasurable, because there's a philosophy floating around in the spiritual community, like always be in a state of pleasure, which means that they're actually going to be afraid of pain. And then we have kind of the mainstream philosophy is like always be in pain, like everything seems painful in the world. And so then they're like, yeah, sacrifice yourself, show up, and doesn't matter if you're hurting, like in work or in athletics, just do it. Don't let your pain or your fear collapse you in that. But then you have this other side, which is pleasure, like seek pleasure. And we kind of think pleasure is peaceful, But pleasure doesn't necessarily have to mean peace, because peace, in my opinion, is that middle point between the two, where we say, I like a certain amount of pain, because it's good to have pressure, whatever that pressure is. If it's emotional pressure, if it's physical pressure, like exercise, like lifting weights or running really long or hard, like
pressure.
it's pressure. We're putting stress on ourselves. And of course, if we surpass a boundary condition of too much stress, then it turns toxic. We don't know what that is. That's what we do in life, is we explore and we go, oh, wow, I really overdid that. I really overdid that side of like stress and if it's starting a business or trying to have a large family or even a family, it's like, I didn't know it would be that stressful trying to do more. So then where do they go? They say, let's do less and let's just enjoy things, which is the pleasurable side, but you don't get to achieve a whole lot because you're just sitting watching the sunset, on the beach, and you're not generating results, let's say. And our society is so driven in results and stress and just do more, that there's this movement of pleasure being the answer, and kind of associating that with peace. And for me, I'm like, no, it seems to be that this middle ground, there's a certain level of pleasure I want to experience and a certain level of pain I want to experience. And as long as I can feel out that wiggle, then I'm in flow between those dualities, and I'm at peace. So peace doesn't necessarily mean not having a sense of stress, and it doesn't have to mean only having pleasure, because that's kind of what we think. But I think we only think that way because our society, 90% of our society, is set up for high levels of stress, that we just kind of think the opposite is the answer. And in my opinion, it's both. And so that's where quantum physics comes in, because that's what quantum physics is really saying. To sum up, they're like, whatever you thought were two different things, it's actually both at the same time. If they're entangled, if they're communicating, if they have charges, positive or negative charges, they're all in superposition, they're all entangled, and so it basically is implying that it's all connected and there's no time separating them. So we're getting into the fifth dimension in that aspect. Time is not a variable anymore. So
I always like to bring up in these videos, because I think it's really cool how it all the time plays out, is, was there a changing point in your life where you ended up, like, how did you come to meet quantum physics? And was there a changing point where you were actually went from what it might seem to be like your eyes closed to like your eyes being open? And what was that changing point?
So I would say one big shift. I've had like three, but one of them really stood out to where I had no idea I could be aware of my mind. And that was, I think it was around 2011. That's when I started, like, kind of like a baby, just like opening, and it's really blurry and stuff. You get knocked out and it's blurry. And it didn't really get like clear until I would say like September 2012. And I ended up meeting the best relationship I ever had in my life. The only person I truly committed to, the only person I really gave myself to, in that moment. We were not together, but in that, it was like 2.5 years. We had an amazing connection that I've never experienced before or after. And so leading up into that, for about 2 years, I was doing a lot of research, because I was oblivious about the emotions of people. If you even said that word, it would just, it wouldn't even register. But I was super emotional. I would get pissed pretty easily, if you take this away, and if you say something I don't understand, I'll call you stupid or something and not really understand. And if you run away, I'll call you stupid because like, why did you run away? Like, I wouldn't understand why people wouldn't want to talk to me anymore.
Yeah.
And I was just so emotionally oblivious. It was crazy. And then I started researching things. I graduated college in 2010, and immediately that month just opened up this doorway where I was like, I can research anything I want, and no one is going to tell me I'm right or wrong because I'm doing it all on my own. And I have access to a world library called the internet. So not only do I have the largest library, but I also have no one critiquing what it is and saying like, Jack, you're not allowed to view it that way. You can read that book, but that's really not what this lesson is about. We don't want you seeing it that way. No one was telling me any of that. And I
Yeah.
was in love with information, and I was doing like 6 to 8 hours a day, just consuming the most radical stuff I could get my hands on. So I didn't really care about censorship and, like, oh, that's just so far-fetched. Like, who gives a crap, any of that stuff. I did not really let that bother me like other people, where they say, only research if it's coming from this source. And I just said, give me the craziest thing. I want to know what people are talking about. Because I started learning about aliens in ancient society, even aliens in today, modern day world. And it started filling in some blanks with religion that I really did not like most of my life, because there are these origin questions that are really hard to answer. And I don't want to be that guy on ancient alien theory with the hair and he's just, because aliens. I don't want to be that guy. But it really does fill in some blanks in terms of let's just say the practicality of these stories, because if we read them word for word, it sounds pretty ridiculous of a story. Any religion, any ancient civilization talking about their gods sounds super ridiculous, in my opinion. And I've hated that all my life. But then I started learning about ancient alien theory, and I know it may not be the best word to use, but when we started looking at all of these gods coming from the sky, and then basically seeding a civilization in particular, and they had some sort of politics, they had policies, they had all the things that we have today, and then they say that they created us in their image, and they want us to be like them in the end and everything. And they have crazy technology that does crazy things that we just think are miracles or miraculous and unexplainable. I'm like, well, today we're doing a lot of those things, and we can explain a lot of those things because we have those technologies too. And really, in my opinion, the thing that we were missing was just not taking it so literally. Like even some Egyptian figures having a dog head and a human body. I think that's kind of like looking at a stick figure painting from a child. In their consciousness, they're seeing a human, but they're like, this is the best I can describe it, with what I know. And so it comes out a stick figure, and we go, yeah, you got an idea. But eventually you're going to expand your consciousness, you're going to see more detail, you're going to understand what these little microcosmic things about human faces or human body, and you're going to draw a more detailed image of a human, and people are going to say, oh, I really know what that is. It's very clear now. Before it's very simple. So we have a lot of these hieroglyphs and architecture. I mean, not architecture. I would say like hieroglyphs are pretty much the main thing, where we're just drawing pictures, trying to explain a story or an experience, and it's super simple. And they're stick figures, and it's kind of messy too, because it's just one thing after another, and it's like, well, I have no idea. Like, if I didn't know much about it, I don't know what they're trying to say. So that really opened up my mind in ways where I was like, wow, this is really opening up my more so intellectual spectrum in terms of what's out there. What are humans relative to the universe and everything. And then it started leaking into some of the physics in terms of how these ETs were making their technology. Like what kind of physics would they have to understand in order for them to travel light speed, you know, across a galaxy that's 100,000 light years across, which is impossible to do even at the speed of light. So then right there, our conventional mainstream science is already breaking down, because they're like, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light. So it would take you 100,000 years to get to a place, and you're essentially time traveling at that point. So to make anything really tangible in terms of traveling, we would need something much different than that operates on something much different than light. And that's hard for us to fathom. So, but there are people that are explaining these sort of things, and I just gobbled it all up because I was just like, I just want information. I don't care where it's coming from. And usually the most bootleg stuff was actually the most interesting and detailed and complex, in my opinion. So I actually went off of mainstream quite a bit, you know, no longer TV shows, no longer documentaries. I wanted these real bootleg interviews, and most people would just turn them away. So I love that sort of stuff. And then so going into the technology, understanding how that works, they started bringing in quantum physics, you know, because quantum physics is really going to make a lot of this stuff make sense. And then in quantum physics, it now ties into consciousness. So now consciousness is a part of their technology, and how they operate these things, how they make it work, and how they separate classes of people, you know, or beings of the universe. And so then I started looking at consciousness, and that's when I was like, wow, I can be aware of my mind. That's really weird. So then I am asking questions. How can I be aware of my awareness? That means I have two different levels of awareness that I'm aware of. And then there's an I am, you know, that's asking my first level of awareness to watch my second level of awareness. So I'm just, you know, confounded with that, and with that concept, and it just really was interesting. And so I just started diving into consciousness in ways where I wanted to understand how other people's consciousness how that could be structured. And so it turns into like psychology. We could just call it psychology or philosophy
Yeah.
and stuff, sociology and everything. But it was just trying to do it in this more raw way where it wasn't so formalized, because in mainstream academia, they say this is how you should process that information. So I just wanted to know how people thought and how people felt
Yeah.
in all the different ways. And I started seeing this pattern run through them all. And it was duality, it was polarity. All consciousness is built on polarity. So if they're angry about something, I don't look at them as saying like, you know, they're angry. Really, all I'm seeing is that they're being tipped between a pressure differential, which would be that duality, and they're being tipped by a certain amount, because you can tip them a certain point and they'll be like, ooh, that feels good, like a massage. Oh, I like that pressure. That feels good. But then you push a little too hard, too much pressure, you know, in that one space where there might be a knot that we didn't know was a knot, you know, there was a
I
knot
like that.
there. And so they go, and then they might get upset, and then we go, oh, now I found a threshold. Same goes with consciousness. Our consciousness has all these um points, pressure points, and
I like
that's just
that.
what we think and believe in the world, with, you know, all sorts of stuff, whatever it is that we're fascinated with, that we're captivated by, that we pursue as work or hobby or love, you know, any of those things. We all have these pressure points, and some of them have knots in them, and they're really sensitive, and it's hard to push on them for too long. And I just started seeing this fundamental quality of consciousness, to where I started looking at consciousness that way, and it allowed me to be able to entertain a lot more states of consciousness than I ever could have imagined, more than what psychologists could, because
Yeah.
they were really fast. And when I would talk with a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a philosopher or a counselor, anytime they're like, wow, you really picked that up super quick. Like, and they thought I had like some degree in it or PhD or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's YouTube. It's YouTube and my, this process, let's say, like I learned from a lot of different people, but I saw this fundamental theme that I can apply to any consciousness. And then everyone makes sense to me now. It's
Yeah.
rare that someone's doing something and I go, I have no idea where they're coming from. And that's the cool part about all of this in terms of like how I've hacked consciousness, in my personal opinion, how I've hacked consciousness. And it all started, back from 2010 to 2012. And that was like a super pivotal point. It was really hard. It was really dark for me, trying to get out of it. It wasn't all butterflies and rainbows. And but then I met the love of my life at that time. And it was all butterflies and rainbows for the most part. I mean, we had such a connection that we fought for one day every 4 months, and all the time in between. It was beautiful. We were truly with each other. And I was just like, this is something else. I've never had someone be so willing to be with me and to listen to me and to see even my faults and all the things that we say love should be and marriage should be and everything. That was it. Like it was just so incredible in that way, to where it was such a great feeling. And that's where I started writing my theory. So we can call it a book or a theory, but I call it a theory because I'm making a claim as to how all of this stuff works. I'm trying to explain the mechanism of a principle from turning mind into matter. And it's called intelligent evolution, because I'm trying to merge the two worlds together of intelligent design, which would be religion, and evolution, which would be science. And I believe that evolution happens because of intelligence and an intelligent mind that we're all connected with. So all beings are evolving intelligently, and we separate those two. And so I've found the mechanism of how that works, and in my opinion. And so I've just broke it open and explained how all this works. It's not like I think it's like I've written, it's probably around like 400 pages maybe, of just explaining how all of this would work.
Yeah.
And I think I did that because I was in love. Like, that was a really difficult thing, but it happened so easily. It was ridiculous.
You can do anything when you're in love. Like, you have
Yes.
this superpower. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because when you're in that state, why would you want to yell at someone? Why?
Yeah.
Because yelling, all it does is it gets me what I want, and now my other partner is either ashamed, because let's say I'm a man and she's a woman. If I make her, if I'm the one upset, then she's probably going to blame herself. She'll probably yell back a little bit, and then if I'm smart enough, I can trick her into believing that she screwed it up for me.
Yeah.
And now I got what I wanted, and now she's like, well, now I'm on eggshells right now, and I don't want to hurt him again. And that's narcissist and empath dynamics right there. It's fundamental. And so we just didn't have that. We really looked at each other as equals, and in doing that, we want to be able to express ourselves, because when we feel there's a hierarchy, it's really hard to express ourselves because we're insecure.
Yeah.
And then if we're on the other side, where we're on the top side, we're looking down and we're saying, you can't do anything to please me. I'm this God over you, and you can try all you want, but you're never going to be good enough. And we never had that. We never had that dynamic of one of us thinking that the other would never be good enough. And then, going the other way, where it's like, we're looking up and like, I'm in his world, and I'm just a follower. I'm a servant. We never had that. We were both equal with each other. And that to me is the best way to have pain and pleasure at the same time, because we can have the pleasure of being able to express ourselves, because that feels amazing. But we also have the pain of, I know this person could could just leave. There's no codependency in this, you know?
Yeah.
And so then there's this pain of like, all right, you know, they're saying something different than what I really want to hear than an experience, but they could easily just leave. So I got to suck it up, and I really have to grow up and ask them some questions and be like, I really want to be with you in this, but I really have no idea where you're coming from. Please enlighten me.
Right.
Versus, please convert. I mean, how can I convert you? Because that's really what most couples do after a while
Right.
is they start wanting to convert the other person
Into
and say,
something that makes them happy rather than
it only
finding
makes
their
one
own
person happy.
happiness. Yeah, and
And that's
rather
a
than
fight.
finding, yeah, a lot of people, I think, instead of like finding their own peace, comfort, and happiness within, and then using their partner as, you know, having them as a gift that, you know, it adds to their own love and beauty. Instead they're using somebody else in order to bring them that love, happiness, and comfort. And it's never healthy because, you know, when they're down, you're down too, so you can't lift them up. And
Totally.
yeah, so it's really an exhausting dynamic, but I see a lot of couples that are in that dynamic where, you know, and I've had them before in the past too. It's like they needed me in order to find their happiness. And so if I wasn't happy, you know, I was lifting them up and trying to stand up myself, you know. So yeah,
Right. Yeah. I've had bad relationships before and after this relationship in
yeah,
2012 to 2015. And so yeah, it was really, you know, it's a really profound concept that is super simple. Just be with the person you're with. But a lot of times we screw it up because, you know, we just want to have sex with them or we just want their money. Those are like the two main things that people seem to get blinded by. Like, oh, he's got a
yeah.
lot of money. Oh, she's fucking hot, you know? And
Or
so
they're
then
there.
you can bleep
They're
that out if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, or somebody that's actually like there, you know.
Yeah, just I mean,
So
once we start seeing that it is about alignment and that it is being we're having an experience, we're trying to make an experience with this person, then
yeah,
there's more willingness to hear them or say, I'll just go be somewhere else, because that's really what we could do at that point. But instead we say, I have to be around this person. I'm contractually obligated to, because I put on a ring, I spent 50K, and I'm not going to bail out of this investment and be alone, you know, fall asleep alone, and all these other reasons, blah blah blah, family, social
yeah,
pressure.
or we have kids and we don't want to raise
Yeah,
them on our own. But I invite everybody that's watching this that isn't in a relationship to actually find somebody that complements them, you know, and that you could actually do stuff with them and not be completely irritated because it's stuff that you don't even like to do. But find somebody that you have a commonality with that adds to your life rather than somebody, like you said, that, you know, has the money, or somebody that is actually just going to be there for you rather than waiting for somebody that's going to
without
be there for
caring
you.
about who they are.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
the thing too. It's like, who the heck are you besides you're good looking, you know, good in bed, and you know, you have money. Like who are you really? And are
All those
you
little
gonna,
microcosmic moments.
yeah, and are you gonna be somebody that's gonna compliment me in 10 years? You know what I mean? Or, you know, once this love goes away, I'm left with all your hobbies that I can't freaking stand and your conversations that drive me through the roof, you know? And it's like, you know, and then you don't have to worry about, you know, I got married to somebody that I can't stand, or I had kids with somebody that I can't stand, but you could like actually like go out on the right foot and actually have a fruitful life where you have somebody that's always there for you.
Absolutely. I've had this conversation with people back in the day where I was just exploring this kind of utopia because I didn't know that's what I had with my partner at that time. And and then we split up and I was heartbroken. But also I had no idea I was calling that relationship in. I had no idea it was going to be as amazing and stellar as it was. And so I didn't know how to get it back. And so I started exploring what I would say a perfect relationship would be like. And yeah, and it's all of these qualities. But when I would start talking about that with other people, they would get upset because they would say, well, let me know once you're married for 10 years, let me know
Yeah,
once you've had kids with
exactly.
them, let me know
And I
once you
don't
get
believe
married.
that. Yeah, I don't believe that. I think that that was because people say that, and I'm like, yeah, but that was the dynamic that you chose the day that you said I do. The day that you decided to go
Absolutely.
out on a second date, you knew that this dynamic was going to happen, but you
Well,
ignored it.
I would say I would actually say I really doubt anyone knows, because that's why they continue with it. And that's where consciousness comes in. We don't see it coming. You know, if a girl and a guy are out on a second date and they're at a restaurant, and even just starting trying to pick the restaurant, you know, was was she like, well, where would you like to eat? I'll eat wherever it is you like to eat. And he's like, well, I normally like eating over here. And then she's like, oh, like, you don't want to go anywhere else though? You know, you don't want to remember what I said I liked on the first date. And then she's kind of, you know, pulling that out. And he's like, no, I mean, I really like what I said I like to eat. And and I think I'm good with that, you know. And then she's like, okay, let's go there. And so then she's already frustrated that he's not paying attention. And those sort of things, we would say,
Yeah,
just leave that, you know, just let that go. It's not a big deal. It's just a food. It's just a restaurant, picking a restaurant. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't know anything else about that person. It's already
right,
super rocky.
right. Yeah,
You know,
that's what I
there's
mean.
already tension,
Yeah,
and they're both kind of suppressing it, because she's saying, he's got a nice car, I know, you know, because he picked me up and everything. And so it's worth it to forget about this little small piece of tension that we're building just trying to pick a restaurant. And then he's saying, I got a good business, like, she's hot, I mean, I know that we're gonna have some fun later, so I'm not gonna care about this tension building
yeah.
up right now. So
Hmm.
that's why people push it aside, is because they're looking at men look at women as sex objects, and women look at men as financial objects. You know, men pay for the dinner and women give sex back in return. And sucks that that's the general dynamic that we seem to be playing around. But if we let go of that, though, those two things, all we're going to see are these little points of tension where we go, oh my God, I had no idea how I was blacking out, because I was so blinded. I was so blinded that I was blacking out of all this other stuff surrounding the relationship. So no wonder it's hard to do things with my partner. So I
Yeah,
actually don't think people know what they're getting into when they're engaging in these bad toxic relationships. And that's, I don't want to say that's why we get into them, like all relationships are there to hurt us, but I just think that we don't have the consciousness to pick
I
up
like that.
these. Yeah, so I don't think that we have these, the consciousness that can pick up the detail in those subtleties. We have, I would say we have a more numb consciousness. Like if we're going through an experience and ask them to, you know, write down what happened in that experience, people might say like, oh, a gust of wind. Yeah, I felt a gust of wind at one point. Maybe the sun was bright. And it's just super, it's like stick figures, like in the child drawing a stick figure of human.
Yeah,
And so how vivid is our consciousness in that moment? And when it gets more and more vivid, we pick up more and more details, and then we go, I don't really feel this kind of alignment playing out over a long period, which is why we're building short-term, I would say short-term bonds, and expecting them to be a long-term investment. So
yeah,
these short-term bonds are, he makes a lot of money, great, but you can't talk with them every night. You know, it's so difficult. You can't, you watch different shows if you're just a Netflix and chiller. You like different foods. You never
Yeah,
these
you don't
people.
have to, you have to have that sense of commonality. So whenever, you know, the love part of it has been there for a while, you have something to talk about to get you back into it again, you know.
Well, even that, saying that love bit, I would say that that love bit sounded like sex,
Honeymoon,
yeah,
the
because then,
honeymoon.
yeah. So people think once the love dies down, then you have to be with that person. And I'm just like, well, then that means that we've defined love as being a certain thing. And usually people would say that's sex. If you're not having sex with the person, then they're just friends.
Yeah,
So it's not like anything else is really gonna develop that intimacy in terms of how other people are perceiving it. But I would say the whole thing should be it. So sex should be a component of it, but we have such a strength, especially in the Western world, we have such a stranglehold and focus on sex, where men are making a lot of money so that they can have as much sex as they want and not have to worry about that. They're like, I have a nice car, I have a nice apartment, I have a nice job, I can pay for anything, I can get any girl I want. And so then they're happy with that. And women are like, I'm so beautiful, I can get any man I want. Doesn't matter, I don't have to worry about anyone under $1 million or whatever. I'm that hot, and I'm that sexy and all of that stuff. And so they're doing so many things for the sake of having a sexual connection with someone. And again, that puts such a stranglehold on their consciousness that they can't see all these other things that really would make us happier. Because
yeah,
eventually, after 2, 5, 10, 20 years, those things build up. And then what do you know? They go to a counselor and they tell them all of the little things that we call nitpicking, but those were all the things that we missed, and all the signs that we did not really honor.
yeah,
And we said, I don't care right now in the short term, in that honeymoon phase. I don't care right now because we're
yeah.
on a honeymoon having a
Honeymoon
bunch of
phase,
sex and
like
drinking.
cloud 9 or whatever. Yeah,
Exactly. And so we're building short-term connections, because fine, go do that. But just recognize that is a short-term, short-lived thing. So don't get married based on that, in my
yeah,
opinion, or get married at all.
yeah.
So
Like
yeah,
we can go out there and we can form a connection with different people. Like I've had, you know, a number of people that have fallen in love with me, and I could say that just because they fell in love with me and they were nice guys, that they were totally meant to be mine, you know, but it's definitely like having that, you know, understanding like
of
who is
what
this
is it?
person? Yeah,
Yeah,
who is this
people,
person?
I post a lot of far out thoughts and everything, and these are things that just run through me, and it's not really like I have to sit and like, all right, come on, like come up with something. This is just my resting state, and I started sharing them a couple years ago more frequently. I've been doing it for years, but it started with a theory. I started writing my thoughts out as a journal, and it turned into me answering some really heavy life questions. And then I was like, I'm gonna pursue this like it's a thing now, not just a journal, like a
Yeah,
personal journal. But I post these thoughts of the day on social media, and I do get that, people are reaching out saying that they love me in some sort of way. And I have to say, like, love is infinite, it's all things.
yeah,
But to say like we're supposed to get married, we're soulmates and we're supposed to get married and do the whole thing, it's like, no, just because there's a fascination for something doesn't mean that there has to be this we're supposed to be tied to the hip for
yeah.
until death do us part.
Mhm.
And I think that when that's kind of showing this lustful consciousness, the short term trying to build a long term relationship.
Yeah,
So I just hopefully, just say in the best way I can that this is really a feeling. It's a new feeling. The things that I'm saying is, it seems to be invoking some feelings in people that they haven't felt before, and they're like, I didn't know I could see these sort of things, or they have been seeing these things, and then I'm writing it out in a paragraph,
Yeah.
and it's not, it's condensed and digestible.
Yeah.
And so we have to really recognize that the love thing can be all sorts of stuff, and then that's a version of me. So I tell people, and people that don't even claim they love me, but that they're just talking about someone else. Whenever
Yeah.
we're talking about love, I just want to look at what is it they're paying attention to, because
Yeah.
if they love my post, that's great, that's why I post it. But also at the same time, are you going to love that I make PBJs, or something? If I and I want organic peanut butter and raspberry preserves instead of jelly and stuff, because then we're at the supermarket, and she might be like, I cannot believe you
I
eat
love that.
PBJs,
Yeah.
and I can't believe you get preserves, it's just jelly,
Yeah.
or something. And so we have those moments where that's tension built up just trying to
Yeah.
get PBJ material. And first she's even saying, like, why does he even do this? And that's building up, that tension, that stress is building up. And
Yeah.
then we're going to hold on to this because I'm going to be frustrated. I get back and I'm like, even though I'm making my grilled PBJ, I can't enjoy it because I know my partner sitting right next to me is thinking the entire time, I want him to just throw it away. And that's tough. And that's just a PBJ.
Yeah.
Imagine all the other things that we miss out on. So I know it sounds like a lot, and I've said this to people and they just throw their hands up, but I'm like, if you really want that kind of love, then you got to start looking at these sort of things, the grandiose things in about a person. Like, what is their life purpose? Yes, ask those questions for sure, because for me that was a big one when I left that relationship back in 2015, because I wanted someone that was on the same life purpose, and I did not realize all those small things had to be there, because I started dating some people that were on a very similar life purpose and we could not connect. And I was like, why? Our life purpose is there. So we're not, we don't have to worry about converting each other, but we just couldn't, we're trying to pick wine to drink for the evening and we couldn't settle on that. And
Right.
all these small things that we just don't recognize as being part of the relationship. And we
Yeah.
just kind of suppress it until we get to whatever the prize is with that person. And
Right.
once we're with them for a certain amount of time, that prize no longer feels like a prize.
Right.
The sex or the money does not feel like a prize anymore. So then we're left with that person, and we have, like you said, we have kids, we have a house together, we have maybe a business together, investments together. And so then we have to deal with it. And then
Yeah.
that's where all the messes that we're in.
Yeah.
So it's just looking at love and just saying, what is my long-term love? What is my short-term love? And how can I actually bring both of those together into my center? Because I love the short-term pleasures and I love the long-term investments. So let's just see, how do we balance those two things out with where we are in this moment in
Right.
life? So if I'm connecting with someone in this way, I would tell in, like, let's say a more lustful way, which sounds bad, but let's say that's the short term. That's I want to experience some pleasure with you, fun vacation, a trip somewhere, or sex, or whatever, an experience. I have to really see or express, is this do I feel this is a short-term thing? Or with someone else, I'm like, this would be a
Yeah.
long run game. And are we in that space for that? And so
Yeah.
it's just being transparent with our intentions and where our
Right.
mind's at. And if we're not evaluating ourselves and where we're at and what our intentions are, and being able to hear the other person say, I don't want that. And
Right.
then we go, that's not going to break my heart. We're saving ourselves a lot of time right now, a lot of time,
Right.
attention, and heartbreak, going through the short-term pinch
Yeah.
versus going into a 10-year thing and then realizing, man, I cannot believe I wasted all that time because I
Right.
was bitter for 9 of those years.
Right.
That's
So
the one.
tell
Yeah.
me about your coaching. How do you help people with that?
So a lot of it is just moving through these mindsets, but there's no specific subject. So for me, mainly just love metaphysics, but that seems to include all sorts of things. I just love mindfulness, but now apply it to whatever it is that we're trying to pursue. So if it's love or relationship, or family dynamics, or friend dynamics, or co-working dynamics, or even dynamics with our own selves, if we're pursuing a hobby or a profession, some sort of creative thing, they're all relationships. And the big thing is, how do we show up to them? And we show up to them with a state of mind. So that's the most important thing, in my opinion, is
Yeah.
how we should, what state of mind we're in is how we show up to them. So if we're frustrated and we have a love partnership, then we're going to experience a relationship through that state of mind, through that lens. So what we do in our sessions is that we move through these states of mind, and without getting into like the process of it, I don't have a specific set structure. I have phases, but
Yeah.
I like to do things a little bit more flowy. And
And
what's that?
pertaining to the individual rather than,
And yeah, and where they are,
yeah,
I don't like scripting things
yeah,
as much. So I know these 5 phases that I've basically written out for myself in terms of what I like to do with these sort of mindsets. But as we go through a session, it won't feel like that. It'll feel a lot like a conversation, because whatever's coming up, we just keep moving with that, kind of like a dance, like an improv dance. And
yeah,
rather than learning a routine and going step, 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 and then you have a start and a finish. My start and a finish is, all right, we're together in this moment and we're both dancing. And so it's we could say it's very expressive, but the whole time I'm trying to collect all this information that's coming in, and then also provide new frames of mind in order
yeah,
to move through that experience with. And so that shifts our energy, because now we're not as frustrated, because we didn't know that we could perceive this experience or this person or this thing through a different angle,
yeah,
through a different kind of consciousness. And then we go, wow, it was, now I can see and not be so frustrated. Because before, when we're frustrated, we only have one perception that we can really see it through. So everything's flat if we're just seeing it straight on, but then it turns 3D once we shift it. So that's really what we're doing, is we're moving through these states of mind so that we can show up to whatever it is in our lives, because it could be all sorts of stuff. And then we're just showing up with this new kind of consciousness, which is going to shift the energy, and it's going to shift the people that we know, and the
our
people that
view
we
of the
meet in the
world.
future. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're just shifting consciousness, and we don't need to drop LSD to do it. So
yeah.
yeah.
How do people get a hold of you to do coaching?
So right now, you can connect with me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook, it's just Jack Coleman. And then Instagram, it's Jack Colm without the an.
I'll share the links for those too then.
Yeah, so if there's anything that you're interested in talking about or opening up, you don't have to book a session. It's not like we'll just go straight off, but I'll answer some questions on there. But if it is something a little bit heavier, like, there's this energy that's been, let's just say, you've been paying attention to, and it's like, I don't know how to move through it, that's going to be a more extensive experience, and let's just say movement of things. So it would take a little bit longer and more attention. And so I would just call that a dedicated session. So we can just chat and then talk about it, and might just be a quick answer. And it's like, oh, thanks. And then it might be like, that's going to take a lot longer. And we could do, so I offer like single sessions between 1 and 4 hours, or you can get 10 hours at a time, and then use those whenever it is you like. So whenever there's an energy coming up, then you could just say, hey, can we do a session? It's like, yep, we'll
Yeah,
get to go as long as you want. within reason and everything, but whatever comes up, we just get to work on that part of it and try to shift the consciousness and the perception with that energy. So yeah, if you're interested in that, just message me and we'll start a conversation, just see what's there.
Which I will advocate for Jack, that he's helped me out with a lot. With especially being a single mother, it's extreme. It's extreme to be a single mother, especially a 3. And so he definitely showed me how to appreciate it rather than seeing it as work. So
Awesome.
yeah,
And when we get to appreciate it, everyone else feels it, like is when they feel we're frustrated, sure, we get a little pity party for a bit, but when people see that, like, wow, I really love the energy in this moment, they're going to shift their mind too. And so it's just going to shift it's just going to ripple out, and it's going to be awesome. So that's really what the big benefit in all of this is, that other people are going to see that energy and be like, wow, I used to get yelled at for this, I used to get chewed out for this, or whatever it was, or this used to be so tense being with this person. And now I have these tools inside of me that allow me to not have those same feelings with these same people. And now they're really appreciating it. So it just
and my dynamic, because of my change in view, is just so extreme.
That's awesome.
My oldest son, that he's 18, like, he's starting to communicate and talk to me and stuff now. So, and before that, we didn't even talk at all. He would hide out in his room all the time, and me and my daughter were really close, and me and my youngest son, it's still a little bit rocky there, but I'm working through it because I do get overwhelmed. So, but for the most part, definitely they see a huge change in
that's awesome
who I am. So yeah,
beautiful.
I definitely back up Jack's quantum coaching for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're experiencing that.
Yeah, I thank you so much for joining me. Again, I definitely wanted to bring you back because it has been a while, and I could see a lot of growth in you since then. But also, yeah, I just wanted to bring it on a little bit more formal than you were so gracious enough to be my first victim.
No, this is awesome. Yeah, so I appreciate it. And yeah, and I love being able to talk about these sort of things. And so, it's awesome that you're on board with them, and that you're spreading it out yourself. So yeah, just keep doing it.
Thank you. All right, well, you have an awesome day.
Beautiful. Thank you too.
Bye.
All right, I'll see you.